Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Caesar Carino, your host, and our guest today is Chief Ralph Copley. Chief Ralph Copley is the chief of the Wadsworth Fire Department. And Ralph, we're going to be getting to that in a couple of minutes, but I'd like to hear a little bit about you. But first of all, I want to say that what we're trying to do is to get all of the department heads from the city of Wadsworth to give a flavor of what it's like here in 2004 as compared to what it was about 70 years ago or 100 years ago or whatever. I can go back maybe with the fire department and memories, so all the way back maybe 65 years ago myself personally. But from that point on, we're going to try to get the advancement of it and the teaching, or rather the training and so forth. But before we do that, tell us who Ralph Copley is, your mom, your dad, where you're from and so forth, when you came to Wadsworth, all of those kinds of things.
Okay. Well, basically who Ralph Copley is, I was born in Ripon, Ohio.
And we've already taken care of your visa, so.
Okay, thank you very much. After being born in Ripon, we relocated to Worcester, Ohio. I lived there till I was in the 3rd grade, and then we moved back to Ripon. And then when I met my wife, Sue Ann.
And how'd you meet your wife, Sue Ann, and who was Sue Ann, and how?
Sue worked at the McDonald's up here on the north end of Wadsworth. She was a shift manager.
Shift manager.
And I was assistant manager of a service station off State Route 57. And you had to have someplace to go eat lunch, so I always end up going in there and eating lunch, and that's how I met my wife.
And who is your wife?
Sue Ann Tiffany was her maiden name.
And the Tiffany family has been around Wadsworth for?
As far as I know, they've
years
been
and
here,
years
yeah.
and years. Yeah, Jack was, how old he was when Jack died, his father, how old was he?
He was 71, I think, when he passed away 2 years ago.
Yeah, so he's my age, actually.
Okay.
I remember the Tiffanys way back, as far as I can remember anybody. So she was a Tiffany.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about the Tiffany family here in a couple of minutes too as well, because they are old timers in Wadsworth. But before we do that, you went then from Worcester to Ripon, and then you have some life between then and the time you got out of high school. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Basically, I spent about 15 years in the construction business. And whenever I met Sue, a close friend of her family was on the fire department.
And who was that close friend?
That was John Heller.
John Heller.
Yeah, he's no longer on the department.
Right.
He retired probably 10 years ago.
And how was John's family and Sue's family interconnected?
They were just close personal friends.
But how?
That's all. Because they both lived out on Hartman Road, I think, and that's how they got to know each other.
That's right. The Hellers lived out on Hartman Road. And
Or Gypsy Lane, I think they called it.
They called it, well, I still call it Gypsy Lane, and all people my age call it Gypsy Lane. As a matter of fact, I'm going to interview one of the Heller members of the family, one of the members of the Heller family here. I had planned to do that a little earlier, but there was an illness, so she's not able to do it. But that family is an old family as well. So we have the Heller family and then the Tiffanys having some kind of a relationship there as neighbors and so forth. You met her and then you got married. But you jumped to marriage before we got to you graduated from Ripon High School.
Okay.
You graduated when from Ripon High School?
1973.
1973 from Ripon High School. And what was your thought at the time that you graduated, Ralph? What were you going to do? Did you think?
I thought I was going to be in construction business
for the rest of your life. You did not say to yourself, well, I'm going to graduate today and I'm going to be the fire chief of Wadsworth.
No. I had no desire whatsoever at that time to become, because I was involved with the family construction business and everything. I mean, that's what my dad did, that's what my brothers did, and it's just, one of those things that just, you just keep going with.
Everyone in the construction business has a different bent. I mean, some in masonry and some in carpentry, some in electricity and so forth. What was yours?
I did carpentry, masonry, cement finishing, and some electrical stuff, not a whole lot of no plumbing or anything like that.
No plumbing or anything like that?
Mostly residential type stuff.
Residential type stuff. And you did it for 15 years?
15 years, yeah.
So you graduated from high school and you did that. So now you're 35, 33 years old.
Well, actually, I started helping do that when I was 13 years old.
So
I did that up until I was about 26, 27 years old.
26 to 27?
Yeah, okay. Somewhere in that area.
Tell us what you were like when you were 26 to 27 years old.
I was newly married, whole new experience, and everything. And with the construction business back in the 70s, things really got bad, you know, because there was no economy basically. So I went to school to become a gunsmith. And after becoming a gunsmith, I went to work at one of the sporting goods stores that was here on the east end of town, American Sporting. And I worked there for 3 years for Chuck Feaster.
And where do you learn gunsmithing?
I took a home study course. I'd always been an avid shooter and hunter and everything, but I just didn't have knowledge on everything. So I took this home study course. It took me about 8 months to get through it and everything.
And then you went out to work for Chuck Feaster.
Went to work for Chuck
Feaster. Everyone in town knows Chuck Feaster.
Yeah.
And the American Sporting Goods out there, you went out there to work and just to fix guns or to sell guns?
Well, that's how it originally started out, and then I ended up being like the assistant manager out there and everything. And then after I worked there, another person opened Maxima Sporting Goods, and he asked me to manage that store.
And that was the north end of town?
That was on the north end of town.
Tell us geographically where it was.
That was on the curve.
Right on the curve.
State Route 94. I think there used to be a hardware store there called Graff's Hardware.
Graff's Hardware, that's right.
Pretty sure it was there at one time. Now it's Gunderson Brothers Furniture.
Right. That there's a long history there too on that hardware store. And I'd like to get somebody from that family. I talked with one of the daughters. Yeah, one of the granddaughters of the original owner. And I'm going to try to get her on the program, even though she's only 42 years old. She has all the memory. All the rest are dead. Every single one of them. Every single one of them is dead. Of the people who owned it at that time. Her own father actually was killed in a cave-in accident.
Yes. Down in Clearview Acres.
Yep, that's right, exactly. Now, the reason I'm asking you what you were like when you were that, you came through an era of American history, which was probably one of the most rebellious in our modern memories.
Right.
And were you out of the ordinary, or did you have the long hair, and did you have the...
I had the long hair and the beard. I mean, just like
everybody else.
Every other kid in the 70s. I mean, that
surely
was
would
just,
look at it right now. As a matter of fact, I would imagine as a chief of fire that they all have to wear a pretty tight...
Well, when I met my wife, that's when I got my hair cut.
Oh, really?
Still kept the beard. And what was really strange, about 4 years after we got married, one Sunday morning, Sue asked me, "What do you look like without a beard?" Because she'd never seen me without a beard. So I shaved it off one Sunday morning.
And
I walked into her parents' house, and they didn't even recognize me. They didn't even recognize me. So, I mean, but we dated.
Sue came home with a new person.
Yeah.
But you kept it off then after that?
Kept it off after that. Never had a beard since then.
Tell us how you started the fire department.
Like I said, John Heller was a close friend of the family's, and he would come and visit and stuff, and he'd sit there and talk about fires and, you know, that kind of thing. And I just found it very interesting, very intriguing. I said, "How do you get on the fire department?" Well, at the time I worked construction, and Chet Fish was chief at the time. And they really didn't need more volunteers at nighttime, but they needed people during the day. So I put my application in. It was 1979, 79 or 80, somewhere. It may have been spring of 80. And I kept, you know, asking Chet about it, but I was only available at night because I worked down in the Worcester area, down in the Wayne County. You know, that's where most of our work was at. And after I went to work at American Sporting in 82, it was. Yeah, 82. Went to work out there. One day Chet was getting his hair cut at Jerry Logodice's barber shop that was right next door to American Sporting. And I was going out to get the mail. And Chet motioned for me to come in the barber shop. He said, "You still interested in getting on the fire department?" I said, "Well, of course. I've been trying for 2.5 years. He said, "Well, why don't you stop down tonight?" So I stopped down, and that was May of 1982, and I've been there ever since. That was it.
Tell us what the fire department was like in terms of training and, I guess, initiation at that time as compared to what it is now.
The fire department's gone through a lot of major changes in the last 22 years. Back when I got on, it was more of a, it was a bunch of great guys, you know, that went out when the tone went off, you know, and got the job done. But there was also like a family atmosphere. I mean, it was a very close-knit group of guys, you know, because this was your second family. Sure. I mean, this is who you worked with. You depended on each other, you know, to, you know, get yourself through. We didn't have bunker pants. I mean, we wore the long coats and the 3/4 length boots that come up, you know, on
Tell us what bunker pants are.
Bunker pants are pants that are made of Nomex, that are pants that's got suspenders, just like you see in the movies now. I mean, kids back then, they didn't even know, what bunker pants were, because firemen pulled on the boots and pulled the boots up and everything. So, but now you're totally enclosed in this protective suit, where 22 years ago, you had a coat and a helmet. You didn't even have a Nomex hood. Now we wear a Nomex hood. So, I mean, safety-wise, things have progressed.
And Nomex hood is what?
It's just a hood that you put on before you put your helmet on that protects your neck and your ears and everything like that. Back when I got on, you could always tell when the fire was getting too hot, it was time to get out, because your ears would start to burn. Well, now that you're wrapped in this envelope, that's what I call it, you can't use those senses anymore. Okay, so you've got to have training and stuff like that there to know when it's time to get out.
Tell us a little bit about the training that you had to go through as a beginning fireman, and compare that with what you now require of your firemen who come on the...
Back in 1982, the only thing you had to do to become a fireman was to take a 36-hour course. It was a very basic course that just really taught you enough to be dangerous. Now we try and stress to everyone that they need to have at least, the state law still says all you need is a 36-hour course, but we try and strive to get everyone to at least the 84-hour level. We even encourage people to go on to the 240-hour level of training, because then that covers all the different aspects of fire, the chemistry of fire, and all the fire protection systems, and everything. Where the basic course, you're getting just enough actually now to get you hurt. I mean, it doesn't give you, in my professional opinion, does not give you enough information.
I would imagine there's probably no depth or no end to the depth of knowledge that you need to have. So the more knowledge you have, and one of the things I can still remember our conversations while I was mayor, one of the things that I really strived to get for the fire people and for anybody else was education. It's probably one of the most important things, because that is what gives you what you need. Now, let's deviate just a little bit from fire here and talk about the the thread that seems to emanate from the fact that you started in as a gunsmith, and all you did was to go down there, and the next thing you know, you're kind of the assistant manager and so forth. You came to the Wadsworth Fire Department, and the next thing you know, you became involved with administration, and didn't take long before you became chief. What do you attribute your ability to go from the, and I don't mean this in any bad way, the lowest to the highest, and actually you don't ask for it, you are chosen for it?
I think basically it comes, every bit of that movement comes down to education. Mm-hmm. The fire world is an ever-changing process. I mean, the things the way they burned in 1980, I mean, the fire still burns, gives off heat, gives off light, but the products that's burning have changed so much with the polymers and all that stuff that's being created.
Tell us a little bit about that, if you can.
Like the furniture, the carpet on your floor, the coverings on your wall, these plants that you see setting in here, they, back 22, 30, 40 years ago, it was all made of natural
fiber. Just
plain old cotton, sisal and hemp and that kind of stuff. Today it's all plastic. It's all man-made, rayon, Dacron, the names go on forever. Mm-hmm. It's all man-made stuff. Totally different burning characteristics. They burn so much more quicker, give off a lot more heat and everything. So, I mean,
and
there's
different fumes.
Oh yeah, totally different fumes and everything.
What protects you from the fumes?
We wear what they call an SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus. We actually take in an air bottle on our back. Looks like a scuba tank, but it's not like a scuba tank. It's positive pressure. Now, back when I got on the fire department, it was not positive pressure. There was a constant pressure in the mask now, where back then there wasn't. I mean, if you didn't have a good fit on your mask or something, you'd still get smoke and stuff. But nowadays, everything's positive pressure, so you get into an atmosphere, it actually pressurizes the mask, so it blows anything away from your...
And how long does that last?
Usually, it depends on your physical condition. Most people can get anywhere from 18 minutes to 30 minutes out of a bottle.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it depends a lot on your physical condition. You take me at my age, and you take someone that's 18 years old that can run a mile in 8 minutes, he's going to get a lot longer use out of a bottle, because of his lung capacity and that kind of stuff. So a lot depends on the people. They're rated to be 30-minute bottles, but not a whole lot of people get them. 30 minutes out of a bottle.
Probably you've been asked this question a million times, and just for the, not necessarily for the history of it, but simply for the curiosity of it. You walk into a fire. You actually walk into the building that's on fire, right?
We don't actually walk in. We actually crawl in, because you want to get down where you got some visibility and stuff. Everyone knows that when something burns, how does smoke go? It goes up and out. Mm-hmm. Okay. How does heat go? Heat always rises. So you want to get down underneath the smoke and the heat.
But there are flames in there, right?
Oh yeah, there's flames in there. I was in a fire down in a church, and it actually flashed over, and the flames was rolling over top of my head and everything.
Doesn't that scare you to death?
You learn to respect it. I mean, sure, you you have to be afraid, because if you ever lose that sense of being afraid, then you're going to get hurt.
Now, we're going to come back to that in a minute, but I want to hit two other areas that, in the event we run out of time, we'll be able to get. First and foremost, you married Sue, and Sue and you have made another line of people. And who is that other line of people?
That's my son, Adam. We've got one child.
Yeah, one child. Mm-hmm. And Adam is what?
He's 20 years old now.
20 years old. What is he doing?
He's a student at Akron U.
Okay. And
in the criminal justice program. He's going to graduate this month.
And is he using his criminal justice expertise anywhere?
He starts the police academy on January the 18th, and right now he's an auxiliary police officer out in Lafayette Township.
So the two of you are dedicated to public service.
And he's also a volunteer fireman here.
Volunteer fireman here. Of course, I know Adam very well. A little boy.
I'm really not too little. He's about 6'5".
6'5",
yeah.
And as strong as an ox.
Yes.
Yes, that's good. That's wonderful there. So that ends that part of because you don't have any grandchildren yet or anything of this nature. So we have that. Now, the other thing that I want to emphasize here, and see if we can get it started at least, is your Wadsworth is your adopted home.
Yes.
But now, as your adopted home, you've taken a tremendous interest in it. You belong to several organizations. You're protected from morning till night. You're in charge of the EMS. You know every sick person in Wadsworth who's transported by ambulance. You have been probably in every building examining it for fire hazards and so forth and so on. That part we understand. But you go one beyond that, and somewhere along the line, you're becoming very famous for a postcard collection of all of the history of Wadsworth. Tell us a little bit about that. How much started you on that?
Back in October 2001, I was injured in a ATV accident, four-wheeler accident. I couldn't work, I couldn't drive, couldn't do anything. Well, I've always been intrigued by the city of Wadsworth, and everything. And I started doing some research. Well, I found there were some books out there and stuff. So I got hold of all the books that I could, Wadsworth Heritage, and everything, and read those. Well, in there's some hand-sketched pictures and some pictures of what the town looked like back in the 20s and 30s and everything. And I thought, well, there's got to be some way to find out more about this. So I got on eBay and got on the internet and stuff and started looking and found postcards, found writings and all kinds of stuff, found some old books and stuff on Wadsworth even. And I started buying stuff. Well, as of this past Tuesday night, I've got about 167 old postcards of Wadsworth.
167. Tell us about some of those postcards.
They go back to, some of them's postmarked 1907. The cards I can date back to around 1904, 1905, but it's got some great views of the downtown area. Seems that they're called town views is what they're called. But the churches, the schools, the square, Broad Street Park, some of the homes and stuff have really, showcased in these cards. I mean, things that's been gone for 30, 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. So it's great to be able to look back, and see exactly what Wadsworth looked like. I mean, like the grassy parks on College Street, the High Street Park. It was originally used as a cow pen for lost and stray cows. A lot of people wouldn't even know that.
And right across the street from there was the veterinarian.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And then there was a bar right on the corner where what I call the Myers Block is, where Accurate office is. It was called Butts Tavern, and there was a hotel upstairs and everything, and that burnt down in 1873. But without reading or buying postcards and stuff like that, I never would have knew any of this. So it's been an interesting.
Well, it's been
time.
an extraordinary adjunct to Wadsworth history, and I think that you and I have decided that you're going to, excuse me, people who do not belong to service clubs at which place you're showing these, that you agreed to come on television, and we'll have a program dedicated nothing but to the postcards, and I think that even the people who are brand new will enjoy them, but particularly the old timers will enjoy them.
Well, I showed them at a Lively Seniors group just a couple weeks ago, and this one group, this one couple had just moved into town like 5 years ago, and they were so impressed. And the comment they made was Wadsworth was clean and neat, just like it is today, back in 1915.
Well, I go back 74 years in Wadsworth, and I don't remember the 74th year, the 73rd, or 72nd, but I do remember after that, so about 70 years I remember Wadsworth. And it was always just a quaint little city.
Yeah, I always get that comment from people that's just moved in here that looks at the city today and looks at these postcards and stuff from the early 1900s and 19 teens. They say it's changed, but it hasn't changed.
So that's the part that hasn't changed. That's right, exactly. Tell us, if you can, about how these people from whom you purchase the cards from Wadsworth, how they got a hold of them, and what's the farthest distance from which you got one of these postcards?
I've bought cards from Washington State. I've bought cards from Maine, Canada. Haven't bought any cards overseas yet or anything. But postcard collecting is a very big thing in America, especially the town views. I mean, there's volumes of books written on postcard collecting. But everyone has their own little avenue to collect, because you can't collect all of them. I mean, there's postcards for holidays, there's postcards for everything, because that's what people used back in the 20s and 30s and 1900s to communicate. There wasn't a telephone, or anything like that. You picked up or a cell phone or a pager or anything like that. And it's really interesting to read on the back of these cards that have been mailed, because that's what I try and get, the ones that's postmarked, so I can actually date them, to read those stories on there, about how they're communicating their health, that they found a job, that they come to work here at the match company, or they come to work here at the injector, or the salt company even, It's just really interesting to see. But there's people out there that I've contacted or made contact with that do nothing but go to postcard shows and antique shops and stuff like that. And if they find anything that has to do with Wadsworth, they email me or call me to see if I have it or if I would be interested in it. So, I mean, it's just not my collection. Other people would help me build this collection up.
One more question on the postcards for the moment, then we'll come back to them. But one more question on the postcards. What would be one of the most interesting things you've seen on the back of a postcard?
I don't know if it'd be interesting, but like I said, people so thankful for getting a job. I mean, these postcards
really
from the 20s and 30s, it must just been, I mean, now you have to have a job. Back then, people wanted to have a job. I mean, it meant so much, and how much they enjoyed their work. And you don't hear people talk about that today like these people talked about it.
I can remember my parents and their friends entering every conversation. Are you working every day?
I mean, it's just...
Because they weren't working every day.
Yeah, a whole different mindset.
Mindset altogether. Mindset. We want to come back to that, but before we do that, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the fire department. When I was growing up here in Wadsworth, I remember a fire in 1934 on Silver Creek Road, but it's Silvercrest Road now, and it was the long house on almost at the corner of Drilling Drive. It was on a Sunday morning. And the fire truck came down all the way to my house, which was maybe 1,000 feet to the east of that, and turned around in our driveway. First time I'd ever seen a fire truck. I was scared to death. I had no idea what they were like. I didn't know anything about them. And I can still remember that it was an old, well, of course at that time it wasn't old because it was 1934, and it was a 1918, or what was the age of that old?
It seems to me like it was in the early 20s. I don't remember the
probably
exact
about
date.
15 or 16 years big, and you could hear it. It woke up the whole household. Turned around, and it took forever to turn around. I guess it was pretty heavy. Snows on the ground as in the wintertime. And they went up there, and there was a driver, and there were a couple people hanging on the outside, and they had just their own clothes on, and they had, they were bundled up because it was cold and so forth. And now, that's what, 70 years ago. Tell us what has happened to fire equipment from 1934 to 2004, and then tell us what some of the some of the developments that you've had to have in terms of training and clothing and things like that to supply that equipment.
1982, when I came on the department, we had a 1948 engine, had a 1975 engine. That was our first, and a 1963 Ford engine. People still rode on the back of them. Like I said, we pulled on the long coats, we pulled on our 3/4 length boots, and jumped on the back, and that we'd hold each other on while we were getting dressed and stuff. We'd wrap our arms together, wrap a hose tool around us or something just to hold us on the back of the truck. And somewhere in the mid-'80s, NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, come out with standards for firefighter safety, as NFPA 1500. That changed the way we did business totally. There was no more riding on the back of the trucks, no more standing up and riding on a truck. Everyone had to be seated, everyone had to be belted. Don't take this the wrong way, it's very good. Because of the safety factors. We had one guy fall off of a truck here in Wadsworth. He thought the truck was going south and the truck was going north, and he leaned the wrong way and off he went, So it's been a great benefit, to the health and safety of us that these standards were developed. Did we like them back in 1985? No. Because that was tradition. No one likes to break tradition. No one likes change, but change is going to happen. And as we've come forward, now you can't even buy a truck that's not got an enclosed cab. We still have 2 engines that don't have enclosed cabs, but anything that was made after the late 80s, early 90s, you're totally enclosed in a cab system now. You're seated, you're belted, and all that kind of stuff. So we've gone from open cabs with no roofs, like our old aerial truck, the 1961, the 1948, and I'm sure the one you've seen didn't have a roof on it either.
Oh, no. Heavens no, it was an old clunker of a thing. I can remember in 1937 they got a new truck, and they parked it in front of what is now Homesbrook Hardware, and everyone wanted to look at it. Mm-hmm. And it was parked in a parking space.
Yeah. Where now, you need 14-foot doors to get them in.
Right.
Because now we're carrying 1,000 gallons of water on. We're carrying 1,000 foot of 4-inch hose. We're carrying supply lines. We're carrying hand lines and everything. And the cost of the equipment. I don't know what a truck cost in the 1930s, but I'm sure it probably wasn't over $10,000 or $12,000.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
I think I remember someone telling me at one time the 1961 aerial truck that was purchased by the city was like $35,000. The aerial truck that we have now, if we was to go to replace it today, would be about $850,000.
Wow,
almost $1 million.
Almost $1 million for a truck.
I'm working now on a new engine spec that will hopefully get in 2005, and it's going to run somewhere around $300,000.
Wow.
So you can see the cost difference.
What about, we talked about have the dress and so forth and so on. You have training every Monday night.
Every Monday night.
Every Monday night. What do you do?
We do different types of evolutions. We try and acquire structures to put people into, especially older structures here in Wadsworth, because there is a lot of homes that were built 50, 60, 70 years ago. It's been real tough for us to do any type of live burns because of the EPA standards and stuff, the air quality stuff that's we're involved with, because we have to comply just like everyone else has to comply. But we try and get these older structures and stuff. We just had a great one up on High Street that we worked with for about 2 months, right across from where the new Walmart is. But we would fill it with smoke. We would do things in that structure to make it as realistic as we possibly could, except for the heat, of course. And put the newer firefighters in there, and even the veteran firefighters, because we don't have fires every day. And last year we had 270 fire calls.
But how many of those were actual fires?
Probably actual structure fires, I think we only had 37.
37.
Okay.
The rest of them are what?
False alarms, car fires, motor vehicle accidents, that we respond with EMS for safety and that kind of stuff. So, fortunately, we don't have fires every day. America is still the worst civilized nation in the world for fires.
The worst?
The worst. They are still the worst.
Why is that? How would you?
Because of education of kids and everything like that there. But that's being changed. Fire prevention is, used to be an old saying when I come on the fire department, 200 years unimpeded by change. Okay,
Ah.
and that's what they talked about the fire service. Now the goal of fire departments is fire prevention. Let's not let the fire happen. Okay, so that's become very important.
Well,
And
then all the other
education-wise.
all the other countries have a better fire
Oh,
protection?
in Europe and stuff like that, there it is unbelievable. It's actually a crime in some of the European countries to have a fire. You will be fined. You can go to jail.
Well, that would
So-
stop you in a hurry.
Oh, big time. But
Yeah.
that's never happened here, you know. And it's just the mindset, I guess. Here, you know, it's just totally different. But America's one of the worst ones.
Well, that's a revelation, absolutely a revelation. What would you say would be the most important thing that you do on a Monday night when you have your fire?
Probably the most important thing is we actually get out and drill or work as teams. I mean, to show the team effort, you know, because not one person is going to do this job. You've always got to have your backup guy. You always got to have the guy on the nozzle, you know, and he's got to be backed up by someone. So everything's a team effort. It really is.
And when we had the big fires here 3 or 4, well, it's 5 years ago now.
1997.
1980, that far,
7 years
wow,
ago.
7 years ago. Wow, the time flies by. Both lumber companies burned down. Well, I shouldn't say both lumber companies, but 2 lumber companies burned down, and it was arson. And we already know that those people had been incarcerated and so forth and so on. What part of the training do you think, excuse me, what part of the training do you think helped you the most in getting those fires contained without one person being injured?
Probably knowing how to read the buildings. Okay, that's the most important thing. Back in 1989, Chief Honert, who was fire chief at the time, I think he started the process in '88. He wanted to create a chief fire inspector position to get into all the buildings, to know what's going on in these buildings and stuff. And that's where fire prevention starts.
And who was that chief fire inspector?
That was me.
Yeah.
That was me.
That's right.
That was that's when I went to work full time for the fire department. In
You were the first.
1989.
You were the
I was
first one.
Mhm.
Yes. First one.
Up until that point, the volunteer officers, Chief Honert, and all of them did it as they had time, you know, because there's other duties that had to be done too. I mean, there was mandatory inspections that had to be done, like the schools, and they worked with the state fire marshal's office, you know, but we didn't have an actual inspection program here. Daycares needed to be inspection. Chet did those, Dick did those, and everything, but you know, there wasn't a developed program, okay, for actually going in and doing everything. Then the big push for me in 1989, because of my construction background, was to make all the new buildings that were being built, make them code compliant, make them as safe as we possibly could, so when people from Wadsworth or outside of Wadsworth came here to shop or live or something, at least we were pretty confident that those buildings met the intent of the code.
Could you identify something which would be a flagrant violation of the code, say for instance in an industrial building, or perhaps even in a commercial building?
Probably the worst one that I found, and this was in 1990, I was out doing a fire pump test. I won't tell you which building it is, but the fire pump was wired backwards. It never would have even came on.
No
And
kidding.
that building had sat there for 15 years, since 1970, I think it was built in 74 or 75, and it was actually wired backwards.
Well, now building construction, you talked about building construction a while ago. Don't buildings now have to have some kind of a barrier between the first floor and the second floor?
Well, the codes have really changed a lot, and there's an old saying in the code industry, tragedy makes change. So when you go back to just the Rhode Island fire just a couple years ago, the means of egress, the interior decorations, a whole lot of changes have been made in the codes, especially from the 1930s, okay, up until now. There's still some things from the 30s that's in the code, but every time there's a school fire, every time there's a hotel fire, an MGM Grand fire, Beverly Hills Supper Club, those all develop changes that were instituted into the building codes and the fire codes.
One of the biggest changes that I know of, and I surely don't know all of the changes, obviously, in the fire department, occurred after the Collinwood school fire in 1911. And from that time on, all doors had to swing out.
Had to swing out. Every door in a school that's used as a means of egress has to swing
Has to
out.
swing out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because that's what stacked those people up at the door.
Stacked them at the door, and they couldn't get out. Let's go back again. We want to come back to this one, but we'll go back again to the Wadsworth aspect of it. You're an outsider, quote an outsider, but you're now an insider and very, very well entwined in the city of Wadsworth and so forth. What in Wadsworth is the thing that attracts the outside people to want to come to Wadsworth? Now you said clean streets and all these other kinds of things, but there has to be something more than clean streets. What is it? Is it a people thing? Is it a geographic thing? What would you say would it be?
I don't think you could pick one thing. I honestly think that it's a whole magnitude of things, like geographic location. I mean, people work in Cleveland, work in Akron. Yeah, I mean, Wadsworth's got a great, road system, interstate system that can get you any of those places in 25, 35,
That's
45
right.
minutes. The people in Wadsworth, or at least the people that I met 25 years ago, were just fantastic. I mean, everyone was devoted, I guess.
And warm and friendly.
Warm and friendly. I mean, that warm and fuzzy stuff really means a lot to people.
You bet it
know,
does.
when they're coming into the community. The school system. I mean, my son went through the school system, not only public, but also our one private school here, Sacred Heart. And I mean, it's just fantastic, the effort that they put forth for the children. And so, I mean, there's a lot of different things that really, so you can't, I couldn't pick out just one thing.
When you were going through your postcards, what did you see there as a thread from let's say 1900 to the present, to the end of the eras that you collected your postcards? What did you see there as changes that no longer are here in Wadsworth? And I'll give you one. We used to have a watering trough right there at the square.
You know, with a large elm tree planted right there.
And that's gone. What are some of the other things that are gone that you can remember?
Some of the like the big industry down on Wadsworth Salt. Okay, it burnt down, I think, in 1927 and everything. But I mean, that whole bottom down in there was industry. I've also got a picture taken from State Road that's looking up, it catches the match, it catches the salt, and it catches the injector. You know, so there was a lot of industry. I mean, down in the southern
Matter of fact,
end of the
that was the only industry in Wadsworth. Was down there. We had a little bit on the east side there in Chemetex and where the Barefoot Soul is, but most of it was right down there.
And one of the things that really the postcards bring out too is the great thing in the south end of Wadsworth. I mean, the south end was like the center of town.
Well, it was at one time,
yeah. It's really neat. I mean, when the train station was down there, which is gone now. Yeah, I mean, the passenger train coming in, the streetcar. Okay, those things, you know, is all gone. I mean, the streetcar left here, what, 1933 or something?
33, yes. It came up East Street and then on Broad Street and then into the
But it went from Akron to Barberton to Wadsworth and turned around in High Street Park and went back.
Back.
You know, and
Backed up and away it went.
Yeah, and everything.
That those things are gone. What other kinds of things are gone that?
I can't really
Well, the north
put
side
my
of
finger on anything.
Okay, let's take the north side of High Street. At one time, we had a gas station.
Oh yeah, okay, yes. Some of the smaller businesses. I mean, that was downtown. You had Merriman's gas station. You had I think it was a furniture store next door.
A big furniture store, 3 stories.
And there were some restaurants down there.
That's right.
Like the Home Restaurant. There was some barber shops down there. There was 2 or 3 barber shops down underneath.
That's the Mike Motzko.
There was 2 hotels downtown.
Yep.
I mean, the Hotel Kreider and the Park Hotel, Boffman House. I think one was called the Razor. I think that was a Boffman House.
That's right.
And everything.
And they're all gone.
They're all gone. They're all gone.
Now on the south side of those of us who were born in Wadsworth remember the corner as being the Pure Oil Nicodemus gas station.
Okay, I don't know anything about that.
That's gone. And there was a movie theater, the Star Theater, that's gone. Do you have any pictures of the Star Theater?
No, I don't have any pictures of the Star Theater.
That would be a good one to have because now when we were growing up, the Star Theater was a place where you went for Westerns, you know. As a matter of fact, the joke was among high school kids, I suspect that I probably not ought to say this on television, but they say that on Saturday morning, the janitor had to go up and scoop the manure from the stage because, you know, they had so many horses and so forth. Bakeries are gone.
Bakeries.
The A&P is gone.
Yeah, because my father-in-law worked at the A&P.
Your father-in-law worked at the A&P?
He worked at the A&P.
That's right, exactly, yes.
And he said he used to go to the Star Theater and pay like 10 cents to see a movie.
Yes, that's right.
On Saturdays.
And Kroger's is gone.
Yeah.
Kroger's was right there where the tax H&R Block.
Okay.
Right, H&R Block, that area.
One that comes to my mind, which we used all the time when I first come to Wadsworth 25 years ago, is Dale's IGA. I don't know if I'm allowed to say particular names.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely,
But
sure. That was
Dale's
on
IGA was there on the west side of Main Street towards Mill Street.
That's right, and that at that time, before it was Dale's IGA, it was Abrams and Mansfield, and before that was Overholt and Freeborn.
Okay.
And Overholt and Freeborn way back into the 20s. That IGA store is gone.
But it was so nice to be able to go into Dale's with the wooden floor and go back to the old meat counter and pick out your meat.
That's right.
You know, and
Yeah.
it was just neat.
Corny was the butcher there, and so was
Rick was his first name, wasn't it?
oh mercy, I can't think of her. I can't think of it right this very second. His
Anyway,
wife is
it was a great
his wife's
place to go.
Still living. Woodford.
Okay.
Yeah, that was there. And the one thing that is gone, and I hope that you have a picture of this one, is the central shoe repair.
I've got it on a 1978 picture of this west side of the square that shows the central school, and that was an alley at one time, and they
It was
built
an
walls
alley,
in there
and they put a brick front, a brick back, and
and a floor, and that was it. Now it's a building.
Now a new building.
Yeah.
It was only about probably not more than 10 feet wide. I'm not sure there's even that.
Probably not.
But it was long.
It was long.
And,
Yeah. Now, one thing that I have noticed in the postcards, if you stand on the square and look at the southeast side of Main Street, the buildings still look the same.
Oh, exactly.
All except
right.
for the awnings, you know, and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Because they didn't have air conditioning and all that
That's
stuff
right.
back then, they had to
had
protect
the
those windows because they faced the west. But the buildings, you can stand there and hold that card postmarked 1913 and look, and it's the
Same one.
Same ones.
Then behind those buildings on the east side, there was the automobile agency. It was the Wright agency at the very, very end. But at the very, very beginning, 1903 or 4, I think that was a place where the first Oldsmobile agency was.
Okay. So,
Let's see, it was Andy Abel had an Oldsmobile agency. I think he had the first agency in the United States. I'm not really positive.
Really?
That's gone. I wish we would not have knocked that down. Do you have pictures of the old diner at the corner of South Lyman and Broad?
No.
No,
no,
that
I've
was
not
there.
been able to get any of those yet.
We have Elvira Chupa Patty used to work in there. She's still living, and she told us about that diner because we all remember it because it was right there. The Eagles is gone, which is, of course, was right there at the, right behind the, what they would call the Ford Garage, you know, the Big T's Ford Garage, which is now the Carpets R Us or
Yeah, it's floor center or something like that.
whatever that is. And then the four gas, the other two corners had gas stations. Do you have a picture of the?
I've got the picture of the golf station with the original library set beside of it.
Right.
I mean, when it was still Mance's Golf, everything. So
Well, before that was Vance Baldwin.
Well, okay, I don't know.
And then there was an old building that housed the bakery, and also the right next to it there was a wooden building. As a matter of fact, how that thing never burned down, I have no idea. That's no longer there. And then to the east of that, there was a building that had the first Wadsworth City Hall and fire department.
Yes.
There. And then it became Trent the tailor, and also a barber shop was there. They knocked that down. Behind that was one of the two big blacksmith shops in Wadsworth, Shetler, on that back there. That is gone. You don't have any pictures of the Shetler?
One picture I do have that's gone. Is the Stevenson Buggy Works.
Oh,
that was
really?
right about where the car wash
That's
is
right.
at.
That's right. Exactly right.
And
That's
everything.
exactly where it was.
And I mean, when that automobile came, there was, I think it says on the card that 20 people worked there and everything, and they all lost their job, of course, because
no
there was
more
no
buggies.
demand for
Yeah.
horse and buggies anymore.
That's right, exactly.
Once the automobile
And then, do you have any pictures of the Big W Market, which is on the corner of Maple Street, the southeast corner of Maple Street and High Street?
No, I don't.
Big W Market. No. And we had an A&P.
Yeah, the A&P is up for Walmart.
I'm sorry, not A&P, but an Acme. We had an Acme on where the bakery is now, very close to where the bakery is.
Now, that market that was on the corner of Maple and High, didn't that become Leib's Plumbing and Heating?
Yes, it did.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then City Hall took
City
it
Hall
over.
took it over,
We put the
that's right.
engineering office and everything.
But
And
it was-
I've got a picture of the City Hall that was built in 1935, I'm thinking.
36.
36 maybe. Yeah, they started in 35 and completed in 36. They had the fire department on the north
That's right,
side.
that's right, exactly.
Before all that stuff was built and everything. That I
One
do have a picture
bay.
of. One bay, that's all it was.
One bay and one truck.
Yeah, and now we got 2 bays.
That's right.
We got 2 stations.
2 stations. And that truck would oh, that's the other thing that I wanted to show how we have changed this. When this would have been in the 30s, a fire was called in. It went to the operator, and how the operator knew how to do this or not, whatever, but she pressed the button that caused the fire siren to
Go off.
And if it went 3 times, up and down 3 times, it was out in the township somewhere. If it went up and down 2 times, it was in the city somewhere. And how the firemen got there, I don't know. However, I do know that the fire truck was almost always manned by local businessmen, because they would just run out of their stores. You could jump on the fire truck just the way they were. They'd put on a coat or a hat or whatever. And then they would go up the road, and as firemen would see the truck, they could stop and they would jump on. Joe Bender was one of those persons. They would always stop to his house. He would jump on the truck, and away he would go. And he's an old man at that time. How do we communicate with firemen now?
Now we have 2 different forms of communication. We've got what we call a Alfie pager, and we also have a voice pager.
And what do they do?
The voice pager emits a tone, and then the voice, because now the call still goes into a dispatch center, which is
But it's not the operator anymore.
it's not the operator anymore. It goes into
The
Wadsworth Police Department, and Wadsworth Police, EMS, and Fire are all dispatched out of the same office area. She sets off what they call a tone through an encoder that opens up this pager.
Right.
And then you get this beep, beep, beep sound, and then there's a voice message that goes with it to tell you, what the situation is and all that kind of. We also have a backup paging system, which is required by NFPA, or not required, recommended by NFPA, and that's an Alfie paging system. And that gives us street coordinates. It's north of Longbrook, or south of West, or something like that there. So there's actually 2 different types of
And
systems.
then do all of the firemen come down to the station and go? Or
We all respond to an assigned location. Only the officer on call actually goes directly to the scene now. I've got 9 people, or 11 people. We just put 2 new people on assigned to respond to Station 2, which is up at 338 Weatherstone. And then the rest of the department responds to Station 1. And then we, roll the equipment as, what's needed from those 2 locations.
Now, a moment ago you said something which has been in the minds of Wadsworth residents for many, many years. That's 2 fire stations. At one time, we were going to excuse me, we were going to put a fire station south of the Erie Railroad tracks because a train could stop us. Trains don't go there anymore. So
Now we get 2 trains a week.
that's 2 trains a week. Where did you put the other one, and why?
We moved it, in 1989, when I first became full-time, there was a levy defeated because they wanted to put a fire station on West Street, West and High, right there beside where Bank 1 is and everything. But everyone knew, or at least I think everyone thought, that with the growing trend north of the bridge, that would be the place to put it.
And that's where you put it.
That's where it ended up being.
And I heard you say that you have 11 people who respond to that station now. How did you do that, and why?
Depends on where you live. I've divided the city into 2 districts.
And what are the 2 districts?
Good streets basically are dividing line between Station 1 and Station 2. Now that district also wraps down and around to the hospital, and it also wraps out towards Hartman Road.
It's not a straight line, in other
It's not a straight line, no. It's a wraparound type district. Because we also have 2 full-time people stationed at Station 2, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that run fire or EMS calls. We also have 2 people down at Station 1, 24 days a week. A lot of people don't realize that we've only got 2 people at each station. They think that Wadsworth is a full-time department. Wadsworth is a full-time department, but it's a limited full-time department.
Right.
So.
And you have it. And as a result of that, I suspect that probably contributes toward the very short response time that you have.
Right now, the response time for EMS is about 3.5 minutes, and for fire, it's about 5.5. Because for EMS, the on-duty crew that's at the station
Just
gets
picks
in
up
the
and
car and
goes.
goes. We cannot roll an engine out with just 2 people. We have to wait for 2 more people to come. So it's still 5.5 minutes.
And
for
why do you have to wait for 4 people? I mean,
because you need 4 people assembled because of safety. Okay, number one, you got an officer or a person in charge. Okay, then you got 2 people that's actually going to work as a team that goes in to make the entry. Okay, to attack the fire, and then you have to have a pump operator.
pump operator. In other words, the reason you have to have 4 is that there are 4 different locations where you have to be.
There's 4 different job functions.
Right.
Okay, it takes 2 people to do one of them.
And since no one is ubiquitous, you have to have different people for different kinds of things. The excuse me. The second station was put into operation, what, 2000?
2001.
2000.
And then it was we actually built it in 2001. It was, no, I'm sorry, 2002.
2002.
2002. It was dedicated January 25th, 2002.
2002, we dedicated that station. I ran for consul in 1968, the first time, I believe, 68 or 70, 68 I believe. And the very issue that was on the table when I ran for mayor in 2000, or 1999, was on the table in 1970, and that was a second station.
Second fire station.
I was talking to a very dear friend of mine who was on council in 1954, and that was the exact same issue that was on the table. And just before Joe Bender died, I talked with him, and he said that in 1940 that was on the table. So it was almost 60 years after these people start talking about a second station until it was built. What has been the impact of that second station in terms of the efficiency of Wadsworth?
Well, it's reduced the response times. I mean, most
takes.
definitely. I mean,
because a fire, what, doubles
in size every minute.
Every minute.
I mean, that's what they say.
In other words, if you go to a fire, the first 5 seconds, you can put it out almost with your foot.
Oh, yeah.
Stamp it out. But if you wait 1 minute, it has gone to a certain level. The second minute, it doubles that.
Doubles that.
And the
Doubles again.
the third minute, it doubles that second minute. In other words, it kind of goes up this way.
Yeah, it just keeps on going.
Just keeps on going. So it's important to be there. How many total destructions do we have to our credit in the past years, 2 or 3 years?
Total? We've had no total destructions.
None.
No.
As a result of our being able to get out there. So the citizens of Wadsworth can be very, very proud and pleased, that we do have that extraordinary service for them. Going back again to the city of Wadsworth and the in-laws. The Tiffanys are an old family. Tell us a little bit about the Tiffanys.
I know Jack's mom's maiden name is Weaver, and I
Weaver.
think they grew up out on Akron Road. There was an orchard out there or something.
right.
It had something to do with the first waterworks that brought water down and
That's right,
everything.
exactly. As a matter of fact, the spring still runs there.
Does it? Okay. But she grew up, and she had 2 sisters out there, Helen and Mady. I don't know what her parents' names was or anything, but I did meet her 2 sisters after I became a part of the family. Now, Sue's mom, Gertrude, she come from Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Well, Ebensburg, Pennsylvania, just outside of Johnstown. And she came here to go to school. That's how she came to the...
Came here to go to school.
Yeah, she came here to go to Akron U and everything.
And what
her
did she
parents'
major in?
family
What did she?
I think it was nursing.
Nursing.
I'm pretty sure it was
I believe
nursing.
that's right. Now, tell us a little bit about Jack Tiffany.
Jack was a construction worker, carpenter. Okay, built houses.
And tell us his relative size.
Jack was a very large guy. I mean, 6'5", just like Adam. I think that's where, I mean, poor Adam was bound to be big because of my size and also...
You're not very short yourself,
right,
are
I'm
you?
6'3".
6'3".
Yeah.
And
Jack
Jack was
being
6'5".
and everything.
And all of the matter of fact, well, Gert, I mean, your mother-in-law is not all of that tall, but she's not a short woman.
Right.
Yeah, so they have big, long, elongated
And
jeans.
Sue's brother, Steve, he's probably 6'4", 6'5", somewhere in that area.
And the Tiffany girls are
Joan and Jane are both tall.
tall,
and
all
everything.
tall girls, very pretty, but very, very tall. You say that she was the manager of that Sue was the manager of the McDonald's at the time. Did she ever give that up?
Oh yeah, she's been with Bank One now for 20. Matter of fact, she just celebrated her 25th year in August of 2003.
And what does she do?
She's the assistant manager at Bank One here in
Assistant
Wadsworth.
manager here in Wadsworth.
No, there's a big long term for it, but I call it an assistant
Assistant manager. I know what you mean. I think the banks are they probably have the edge on titles, things like that.
And they just merged with J.P. Morgan, so now it's J.P. Morgan Chase or something like that.
Every week somebody emerges with somebody in the banking industry. You had mentioned also that the Weaver Orchard, or the Weaver, the orchard. Do you remember any of the stories about the Weaver Orchard?
I just heard that Grandma talk a few times about going out into the orchard. Not a whole lot of detail or anything like that there. No.
The reason I'm asking is that I would like to be able to get someone, and the person who would know has been dead for many, many years, that whole area. And there is one person who is still living, but unfortunately has Alzheimer's and he doesn't quite remember. I'd like to be able to get someone from that whole area. The area would be north of 261, east of Hartman Road, and west of what is presently Highland Avenue. In other words, in that general area. We have some people who have some good knowledge, but I'd like to have someone beyond the younger generation who can go back all the way to Weaver Orchard, and also who can go back to tell us where the actual first pumping station, because it was all by gravity, was up there at the creek, or the spring that brought the water all the way down through Wadsworth to Wadsworth. In 1947, they dug up in front of what at that time was the Big W Market, and they found one of those wooden pipes.
We've got a wooden pipe hanging in the fire station.
You have it in your fireplace.
I had a box made for it and everything to protect it, and hopefully preserve it.
That's what brought it down. That's what brought it down. So we have a lot of Wadsworth history here with the fire department, with families in the fire department, and probably the most valuable part here is the fact that your adopted city is now your native city, as it were, and even though you have relatives elsewhere. We're almost out of time, Ralph, but tell us one thing about the future of the city of Wadsworth in terms of the fire, what your plans are for that, because some way down the line, someone is going to say, well, Chief Ralph Copley talked about this in 2004, and here it is 2054, and we still haven't done it. Just as Joe Bender said in 1940, we were talking about a second fire station, and it took until almost 62 years for it to actually happen. So tell us what your plans are, what your dreams are for the fire department in Wadsworth for the next.
Probably the biggest dream would be to add full-time people to the department, so that we can get that four-person response out of both stations, okay, quickly, and get that fire response time down to 3.5 minutes. Also, just like we have EMS. Probably the next thing on my list that I'd like to see done before I retire would be to get a third station down in the south end of Wadsworth, going back to 1940s again, right, because of the residential growth down there. We got the corporate parkway down there. The industrial growth needs that type of area. Okay.
Actually, Ward 3 now is one of the largest wards in the
so we really need to start focusing on that, and we are having discussions. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we're starting to look. We did have an option on some property on Corporate Parkway, but we're starting to rethink that now because of the residential growth there off of Johnson and everything. Right. So, I mean, those would probably be the two major things.
What about equipment?
Like I said earlier, we're right now looking at speccing a brand new engine. Okay, that's going to bring us into the this century, because they've even changed since 1985 when we bought our last engine and everything. So,
Ralph, we've run out of time, unfortunately. It's been very, very interesting. The reason we had you on the program today is to give a vision of what our fire department was in 2004 for the people in 2054 who might read this or know about this or view this, and also to give you at least an understanding of what we remember some 70 years ago all the way up to the present time. Thank you very much. It's been very valuable, and particularly on your postcards and your desire to find out more about Wadsworth history. Thanks again, Ralph.
You're welcome.